Have you ever seen a 7-year-old walk through the rain just to teach a blind child how to play a single note and end up healing a billionaire's broken heart? If you've ever witnessed kindness that changed everything, this story will stay with you long after it ends. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight, and let's see how far this little note of hope can travel across America. The autumn rain was falling hard that October afternoon in Boston, turning the city's cobblestone streets into mirrors of gray. A small figure stood in front of the Crawford estate gates, Lila Bennett, just 7, her blonde hair damp under a faded hood, clutching a worn backpack to her chest. She pressed the intercom button, her voice trembling. "Good afternoon. I'm here to teach piano to Noah Crawford." Static. Then a cold female voice answered. "You're the teacher?" "Yes, ma'am." A pause. The gate opened with a low metallic hum. Lila flinched, then stepped through, her tiny shoes splashing in shallow puddles. The house ahead looked like something out of a storybook, grand, perfect, but silent. She'd been told the boy inside was blind since birth, that his father was a man of great wealth and greater grief. None of that mattered. She needed the $20 for Grandpa Henry's medicine. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and loneliness. Mrs. Greenfield, the housekeeper, led her through hallways, lined with portraits that never smiled. "Mr. Crawford doesn't like to be disturbed," the woman said. "Your lessons will be in the East Wing. And one more thing, don't talk about the boy's condition." Lila nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The music room took her breath away. A grand piano gleamed beneath a chandelier, untouched, as if waiting for someone brave enough to awaken it. She ran her small fingers lightly along the keys, pressing one note, middle C. The sound shimmered in the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. She couldn't help herself. She began to play a lullaby her mother had written before she died. Each note carried a little bit of warmth, a little bit of missing someone. Behind her, a small voice whispered, "That's beautiful." Lila turned and saw a boy about 5, dark-haired, pale-eyed, standing uncertainly in the doorway. "Hi," she said softly. "You must be Noah." He nodded, smiling shyly. "I can't see it, but it sounds happy." "That's all music needs to be," Lila said, guiding his hand to the piano. "Here, feel this key. That's middle C. Every song starts somewhere. This is where ours begins." In the hallway, unseen, Ethan Crawford watched. 32. Immaculate suit. Eyes carved from exhaustion. For 3 years since his wife Claire's death, he had built walls of silence. His son's laughter had vanished with her. But now, through a half-open door, he watched this little girl, wet shoes, golden hair, trembling voice bring sound back into a home that had forgotten what life felt like. When Noah pressed the key and laughed, "I made music," Ethan felt something inside him crack open. He hadn't realized how long it had been since he'd heard that sound joy. The lesson lasted nearly an hour. Lila's patience was beyond her years. She described music in colors Noah could imagine, in feelings he could touch. When they finished, she whispered to herself, "Please let this work. Grandpa needs his medicine." Ethan froze at the door. "Medicine? Grandpa?" He waited until she left, the $20 bill clutched in her small hand like treasure. Then he went to the piano and pressed the same key she had touched. The note sounded hollow, ordinary. Yet when she played it, it had felt alive. He sat there for a long time in the dark, staring at the rain streaking down the tall windows, listening to the faint echo of the lullaby still hanging in the air. Something about that child lingered in his mind, a spark of light he couldn't ignore. That night, unable to sleep, Ethan opened his phone and called his assistant. "Margaret," he said quietly, "find out everything you can about a girl named Lila Bennett. Age 7. Lives somewhere in South Boston. I want details by morning." He hung up and turned toward the silent piano again. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, and for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of the sound. But as he rose to leave, One small thing caught his eye on the floor near the piano bench, Lila's old notebook, its corner torn. The first page scrawled with childlike handwriting, "Songs for Grandpa Henry." Ethan picked it up slowly, and somewhere deep inside, he knew this was just the beginning. The next morning, the Crawford mansion woke to a light drizzle and the faint hum of traffic along Commonwealth Avenue. Inside, the grand piano waited, silent again, until a small hand touched its polished edge. Lila had returned, hair neatly brushed, face still pale from a sleepless night. She'd wrapped Grandpa Henry's medication in a paper napkin and tucked it deep inside her backpack, praying this week's lesson would earn enough for another bottle. Mrs. Greenfield met her at the door, eyebrows softening. "He's been waiting for you," she said, glancing toward the music room. Noah sat at the bench, legs swinging, his fingers already exploring the keys. "I practiced," he announced proudly. "Can you tell?" Lila smiled. "I can hear it." She helped him adjust his posture and played a simple scale, counting aloud. "See? You already remember the pattern." From the hallway, Ethan stood with his coffee untouched, watching again through the cracked door. He told himself it was curiosity, but deep down, he knew it was something more longing. The girl's voice was soft but sure, her patience unshakable. She spoke to Noah not as a student, but as a friend. When the lesson ended, Mrs. Greenfield brought the payment envelope as usual. But this time, Ethan stepped forward. "Mrs. Greenfield, leave it with me." Lila looked up, startled. It was the first time she'd seen the man of the house up close. He was taller than she'd imagined, sharply dressed. But there was something tired in his eyes. Something human. "You're doing remarkable work with my son," he said, voice low. "I'd like you to keep teaching him. Mrs. Greenfield will pay you $50 a week instead of 20. Lila blinked. 50. Her voice barely a whisper. "Yes. Consider it a bonus for bringing life back into this house." "Thank you, sir," she said quickly, clutching the envelope to her chest. "But Noah's the one who's special. He just needed someone to listen." Ethan paused, almost smiling. "You remind me of someone." Later, when Lila walked home through the damp streets of South Boston, she opened the envelope beneath a flickering streetlight. $50. Nearly a week's worth of medicine. Her heart felt too big for her chest. For the first time in months, she let herself hope. But across the city, Ethan Crawford sat in his office, staring at a manila folder on his desk. The background check was thorough. Lila Bennett, age 7, lives with grandfather, Professor Henry Bennett, retired music professor from Harvard, now suffering from Parkinson's disease. Mother, Sarah Bennett, deceased. No father listed. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. The picture attached showed a crumbling brick apartment building on East 7th Street. No child should have to live like that, he thought, especially not one who could make music sound like sunlight. The next morning, Lila returned again. Noah ran to greet her. "Dad said I can learn another song. Can we play the one you were playing before?" She laughed. "You mean the lullaby?" "Sure. But this time, you'll play the first note." Noah pressed a single key. Middle C. The same sound that had started everything. Ethan, standing quietly by the window, felt the room brighten. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed this small laughter. The rhythm of lessons. The pulse of a home filled with something other than grief. But the lightness was fragile. When Lila thought no one was watching, her hand slipped into her pocket, fingers brushing the edge of an empty pill bottle. Her smile flickered. But she kept playing. Ethan noticed. His jaw tightened. That night, he made another call. "Dr. Raymond Chen, get me an appointment at Sterling Memorial Hospital. I need a consultation about Parkinson's medication coverage. And send a car tomorrow morning to pick up a patient from South Boston. His name is Henry Bennett." He hung up and looked once more at the piano, still glowing faintly under the chandelier's light. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan felt something close to purpose. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered across the wet pavement, and somewhere far away, a siren wailed into the night. In her small apartment across town, Lila tucked Grandpa Henry into bed. He murmured something half dreaming, half awake. "Keep playing, Lily. Don't stop the music." She smiled through tears. "I won't, Grandpa. I promise." But as the night deepened, she didn't notice the shadow of a man standing under the street lamp across the alley, watching their window with a cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. Someone who knew her name. Spring sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the Crawford mansion, painting soft gold across the piano keys. For the first time in years, the house no longer felt haunted. It felt alive. Lila's laughter drifted through the hallways, and Noah's clumsy scales turned into melodies that filled every room like morning light. "Again," Noah grinned, his small hands tapping the keys. "Did I miss the F?" "Just by a little," Lila said, giggling. "You're getting better every day." From the doorway, Ethan watched quietly. The scene warmed something deep inside him he hadn't realized was still capable of feeling. A home. A family. Something real. Later that week, Mrs. Greenfield took Lila shopping for new clothes for her first day at the New England Conservatory Youth Program. The girl had earned a scholarship after Professor Porter, a stern woman with kind eyes, saw her play Chopin's Nocturne by ear. "Talent like that," Porter had said, "comes once in a generation." At the conservatory, Lila felt like a tiny bird in a cage of swans. The other students carried designer cases and perfect smiles. When she sat at the piano, whispers rippled behind her. "She's the charity kid," one girl said, Victoria Ashworth, daughter of a Boston banker. "Mr. Crawford's pet project." Lila's cheeks burned, but she stayed silent. When Professor Porter called on her to perform, she took a deep breath and closed her eyes. The first notes floated out clear, soft, and full of something no training could create. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Professor Porter smiled faintly. "That," she said, "is what real music sounds like." But the words of Victoria's mockery lingered long after class. That night, back at the mansion, Lila sat alone by the piano, staring at her reflection in the glossy black surface. When Ethan entered, she didn't look up. "Rough day?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "Mr. Crawford, am I just a replacement for someone you lost?" The question hit him like a blade. He knelt beside her, his voice low and steady. "No, Lila. You're not replacing anyone. You're reminding me that love still exists. You're irreplaceable." Her blue eyes shimmered. "I just don't want to be someone's charity." "You're not charity," Ethan said, emotion thick in his voice. "You're family." Noah, who'd been listening from the doorway, ran to wrap his arms around them both. "See? I told you, Lila. You're my sister now." She laughed through her tears, the sound soft and real. In that moment, the broken pieces of three hearts seemed to fit perfectly together. But outside, across the manicured lawn, a man stood behind the iron gates smoking a cigarette, his face hidden beneath the brim of a worn cap. His eyes followed the warm glow spilling from the mansion windows, the laughter, the light, the life he wasn't part of. He exhaled a trail of smoke, his lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. "Enjoy it while it lasts, little girl," he murmured, "because I'm coming for what's mine." And with that, Gregory Bennett flicked his cigarette into the gravel, turned, and disappeared into the Boston fog, leaving behind the faint, bitter scent of trouble. A week later, a thick white envelope arrived at the Crawford estate, stamped, "Legal Notice." Mrs. Greenfield handed it to Ethan as he finished a call in his study. One glance at the return address, Massachusetts Family Court, and his chest tightened. The letter was short, but the words hit like a hammer. "Mr. Gregory Bennett, biological relative of minor Lila Bennett, has filed a petition for guardianship." Ethan read it twice. jaw tightening. He'd expected gratitude from the world for saving a child's life, not a challenge to take her away. Outside his office window, rain began to fall again, just like the day she'd first arrived. That evening, Lila sat at the piano, unaware of the storm gathering around her. Noah hummed beside her as she guided his hands across the keys. "Listen," she said softly. "Each note is a choice. Even when it's hard, you can still choose something beautiful." Ethan stepped into the room, voice heavy. "Lila, there's something we need to talk about," he explained as gently as he could. A man, claiming to be her uncle, Gregory Bennett, had come forward. Lila frowned. "I don't have an uncle." Ethan nodded grimly. "I know, but we'll figure this out together." That night, after she'd gone to bed, Ethan met with his lawyer, David Chen. The evidence they uncovered chilled him. Gregory wasn't just some relative. He was Sarah Bennett's younger brother, estranged for 15 years, drowning in gambling debt, with multiple fraud arrests. "He thinks if he gets custody," Chen said, "he'll gain access to the trust you set up for Lila and her grandfather's medical care." Ethan's voice hardened. "Then he's about to learn what it means to fight for family." Across town, in a dim bar off Dorchester Avenue, Gregory sat hunched over a glass of whiskey, the letter of petition crumpled in his pocket. A tabloid headline on the counter caught his eye. "Billionaire tech CEO sponsors orphan prodigy." He smirked. So that's where the money went. A week later, as Lila prepared for her recital at the conservatory, a stranger waited outside the school gates. He wore a gray coat and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Lila," he called. "You don't know me, sweetheart, but I'm family." She froze, every instinct whispering danger. Before she could speak, Ethan's car pulled up beside her. He stepped out, his presence sharp as thunder. "Get away from her." Gregory's smile vanished. "I'll see you in court, Mr. Crawford." Ethan opened the door for Lila, voice low but firm. "Don't worry. I'm not letting anyone take you away." As they drove off, raindrops streaked across the windshield. Lila clutched her music book to her chest, trying not to tremble. For the first time, she understood. Some battles couldn't be fought with music alone. The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and tension. Reporters lined the back row, whispering headlines before the hearing had even begun. Ethan Crawford v. Gregory Bennett, the battle for a little girl's future. Lila sat between Ethan and Mrs. Greenfield, her small hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Across the aisle, Gregory smirked in a cheap suit, pretending to be calm, his lawyer murmuring rehearsed sympathy. Judge Martha Henderson, a silver-haired woman known for her fairness, entered. "This court will come to order," she said, voice steady, but warm. Gregory's lawyer spoke first. "Your Honor, my client merely seeks to reunite with his niece, who has been in the custody of a man unrelated by blood. He can provide the love and stability her biological family owes her." Ethan's jaw flexed. He wanted to shout that family was more than DNA, but David Chen placed a hand on his arm. "Let me handle this," the lawyer whispered. When their turn came, Chen stood. "Your Honor, this man abandoned Sarah Bennett, Lila's mother, when she was pregnant. He never paid a cent of support, never visited, never called. He's here today because he learned Mr. Crawford has established a trust for Lila's future." Gregory shifted in his seat, color draining from his face. "That's not true." Chen opened a folder and handed documents to the bailiff. "Your Honor, these are verified court records from 2013, Mr. Bennett voluntarily signed a declaration relinquishing all paternal rights and responsibilities toward the child. His claim to custody is not only unfounded, it's deceitful." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even the reporters fell silent. Judge Henderson adjusted her glasses, scanning the papers. "Mr. Bennett, is this your signature?" Gregory's voice cracked. I was young, scared, I didn't know she'd, uh, you knew exactly what you were doing, Ethan said quietly, unable to hold back. You walked away when it mattered. You don't get to walk back in now. Mr. Crawford, the judge warned gently, but there was empathy in her eyes. Then she turned to Lila. Sweetheart, I know this is difficult. Would you like to tell me where you want to live? Lila stood, legs trembling, but voice clear. Your Honor, I want to stay with Mr. Crawford and Noah. They're my family. Grandpa Henry said, love is what makes a home. Mr. Crawford made sure we were safe. I don't want to leave. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Judge Henderson nodded slowly. Thank you, Lila. You've said everything this court needs to hear. She looked back at Gregory. You had 7 years to be a father, sir. And you chose silence. This court will not reward neglect or greed. Petition denied. Ethan's breath left his body in one long exhale. He didn't realize he was shaking until Mrs. Greenfield squeezed his shoulder. Lila turned to him, tears welling in her eyes. Can we go home now? Soon, he said softly, smiling for the first time in weeks. But before they could leave, the judge spoke again. Mr. Crawford, given your guardianship petition and Mr. Bennett's forfeiture, the court is prepared to schedule an adoption hearing. Would you like to proceed? Ethan looked at Lila, her tiny face streaked with tears and relief. Yes, Your Honor, he said firmly. I would. Judge Henderson tapped her gavel. Then we'll reconvene in 4 weeks. Outside, flashbulbs exploded as they exited the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions, but Ethan ignored them. He placed a protective arm around Lila and Noah as they climbed into the car. Lila leaned her head against his shoulder, voice barely a whisper. Does this mean we're safe now? Ethan hesitated, glancing at the darkening clouds rolling over Boston Harbor. For now, he said quietly. But as their car pulled away, Gregory Bennett stood on the courthouse steps, his expression hard and empty. He pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands, and muttered under his breath, You may have won today, Crawford. But some ghosts don't stay buried. Thunder rumbled above the city as the first drops of rain began to fall again. A month later, the Crawford mansion shimmered with late spring light. For the first time in years, laughter had replaced silence. The piano in the East Music Room, once covered in dust, now sang daily. Lila's small hands glided over the keys while Noah hummed beside her, following each note by touch. We're getting better, he said proudly. Ethan leaned against the doorway, coffee in hand, watching them. Better, he teased. You two sound like the Boston Symphony. Lila smiled shyly. You really think so? I know so, he said, smiling. But behind that calm confidence, he carried a quiet storm of emotions. The adoption hearing was only a week away. Everything he'd built, the fragile sense of family, the laughter, the second chance at life, hung in the balance. That evening, he visited Professor Henry in the downstairs suite. The old man sat near the window, sunlight pooling around his chair. You look tired, Ethan, Henry said, his voice frail but kind. Ethan smiled faintly. Just thinking too much. Henry studied him. You're worried about proving you belong. But family isn't a test you pass. It's a promise you keep. Ethan nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. Thank you, Professor, for trusting me with her. Son, Henry said softly. I stopped trusting money and titles a long time ago. I trust hearts, and yours found her when no one else was looking. A week later, on the morning of the hearing, Boston's sky glowed bright and clear. In Judge Henderson's private chambers, Lila wore a white dress with tiny embroidered flowers. She held Ethan's hand tightly, while Mrs. Greenfield and Noah waited just outside the room. Judge Henderson smiled warmly. This is the easy part, Mr. Crawford. All the paperwork is in order. Do you understand that adoption is permanent? That she'll be your legal daughter, in every way? Ethan met her gaze, his voice steady but full of emotion. Yes, Your Honor. She already is. And you, Lila? The judge said kindly. Do you understand what this means? Lila nodded. It means he's my dad forever. The judge's eyes softened. Then by the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I declare this adoption final. Congratulations. Your family is official. Ethan turned to Lila, who whispered through tears, Thank you, Daddy. He froze for a heartbeat, then pulled her close. The word Daddy, something he hadn't heard since his wife's passing, hit him with both pain and healing. You don't need to thank me, he whispered back. You saved us. Outside the courtroom, Noah jumped into Lila's arms. So, it's real now? You're really my sister? Really, she laughed, spinning him around. Forever. That evening, the mansion glowed with quiet celebration. Mrs. Greenfield made apple pie. Noah played his new song. And Lila placed a small framed photo on the piano. Her mother, Sarah, smiling beside her grandfather in their old apartment. Mom would have loved this house, she whispered. She would have loved you here, Ethan said softly. As night deepened, they gathered around the piano for one final song, Heart and Soul, the first duet Lila had ever taught Noah. Ethan joined them, his deeper notes, clumsy but heartfelt. When the last chord faded, silence lingered, gentle, peaceful. For the first time, the house felt whole. But the quiet didn't last. As Ethan tucked Lila into bed, his phone buzzed. It was David Chen. You might want to sit down, the lawyer said. I ran a background check on Gregory one more time. There's something new, something he didn't tell the court. Ethan frowned. What is it? He's not Sarah's brother, Chen said slowly. DNA, from his old arrest record, just matched a sealed file from 2013. He's Sarah's. The call dropped before Chen could finish. The line went dead. Outside, wind lashed against the mansion windows. Ethan tried calling back, no signal. The storm had knocked out the cell tower. He stepped into the hallway, heart pounding, when he saw movement near the front gates, headlights flickering through the rain. A dark sedan idled on the road, engine running, someone watching the house. Ethan's pulse quickened. He turned toward Lila's room, but stopped when a faint knock echoed from the front door. He opened it cautiously. No one there. Just a single envelope on the doormat, soaked, edges torn. He picked it up, eyes narrowing at the smudged handwriting across the front. For Lila from Gregory. Inside was a photograph. Two women, Sarah Bennett and Claire Crawford. Ethan's late wife, standing side by side at a Boston Symphony concert years ago. Arms around each other. Smiling, Ethan's breath caught. Underneath the photo, one line was scribbled in ink, now blurred by rain. Ask her what your wife promised before she died. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room in stark white light. Ethan looked toward the staircase where Lila slept. His hands trembled as the truth he'd never imagined began to unfold. Sarah and Claire had known each other. And whatever promise they'd shared, it was about her. The storm raged through the night, rattling the windows of the Crawford mansion like a warning from the past. Ethan sat in his study, the photograph trembling in his hands. Sarah Bennett and Claire Crawford smiling together, laughing, alive. His late wife, and the mother of the girl he had just adopted. For years he'd believed their worlds had never touched. Yet here they were, in the same frame, their connection undeniable. Beneath the photo, the words scrawled in Gregory's jagged handwriting burned in his mind. Ask her what your wife promised before she died. At dawn, when the rain eased, Ethan drove to Sterling Memorial Hospital. Dr. Raymond Chen, who had treated both Claire and Sarah years earlier, agreed to meet him privately. They met here, Chen said, flipping through an old digital record. Both musicians, both involved in charity concerts for pediatric care. And, yes, Claire left a message before she died. A sealed letter. Ethan's voice cracked. Where is it? Chen retrieved a small envelope from the archives. The handwriting was unmistakably Claire's, elegant, precise. Ethan opened it, with shaking hands. Alex, if you're reading this, it means I didn't survive the accident. Please, don't shut yourself away. If you ever meet a girl named Lila Bennett, take care of her. She's Sarah's daughter, my dearest friend from Juilliard. I made a promise to Sarah before she passed, that if anything happened to her, or Henry, I would find Leela and protect her. She has her mother's gift and her father's heart. And you, of all people, will understand what that means. Love. Claire. Ethan's breath caught. His wife had known. Claire had known everything. Back at the mansion, Lila was in the music room, playing the same Chopin nocturne her mother had loved. The morning sun broke through the windows, bathing her in gold. When Ethan entered, she stopped mid-note, sensing something had changed. Mr. Crawford? She asked quietly. You look pale. He walked closer, holding the photograph and the letter. Lila, he began softly. There's something I need to tell you about your mother and about Claire. As he spoke, tears filled Lila's eyes. They were friends? Best friends, Ethan said. Claire made me promise that if I ever found you, I'd make sure you were safe. Only, I didn't remember until now. I failed to keep her promise for years, until the day you rang our gate. Lila covered her mouth, her voice trembling. Then, it wasn't an accident that I came here? He shook his head. Maybe not an accident, maybe something bigger. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The piano sat silent between them, as if listening. Finally, Lila reached out and placed her hand over his. Maybe it wasn't you who failed, Mr. Crawford. Maybe it was just time waiting for the right moment. He smiled through his tears. It's Ethan. Or, Dad, if you'd rather. Her lips trembled, then curved into a soft, tearful smile. Dad. Noah burst into the room then, carrying his small braille notebook. Dad. Dad. You have to hear this. I learned the whole song. Lila laughed and wiped her eyes. Then let's play it together. The three of them sat at the piano. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he found his place on the keys. Lila started the melody. Noah joined, fingers confident and sure. Then, Ethan added the final chords. The music rose gentle, warm, full of forgiveness. It wasn't just sound anymore. It was connection. It was family. When the last note faded, the house felt still, but not empty. Outside, the clouds parted over Boston, sunlight spilling through, as if the city itself exhaled. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Ethan walked into the garden where Claire's favorite lilac tree had begun to bloom. He knelt beneath it, holding the letter against his chest. You kept your promise, he whispered to the wind. You brought her to me. From Lila's bedroom window, soft music began again, a new melody, one she was composing herself. Each note was tender, deliberate, and full of memory. Grandpa Henry, sitting by his lamp, listened with tears in his eyes. That's her mother's soul, he murmured, and her father's strength. Inside the house, the framed photograph of Sarah and Claire rested above the piano. Beneath it, in a small silver frame, a newer picture, Ethan, Lila, and Noah sat side by side, smiling. The past and the present finally shared one home. And somewhere in the echo of the music, it was as if two voices, Sarah's and Claire's, whispered together, proud and peaceful. The promise was never broken. It just took the music to find its way back. The story of Lila Bennett and Ethan Crawford is more than a tale of music and miracles. It's a quiet reminder of how compassion can rebuild what grief once destroyed. It shows that wealth, status, or loss do not define the worth of a human being. What truly matters is the courage to love again after life has taken everything away. Through Lila's innocence and resilience, we see the healing power of kindness, how a child's pure heart can reach places untouched by reason, and how a single act of empathy can awaken hope in even the coldest soul. Ethan's transformation from a man trapped in silence to a father who learns to feel again reflects something universal. That redemption is not found in success, but in connection. The story urges us to look beyond appearances, to believe that even broken people can become instruments of grace, and that family is not always written by blood, but by choice, trust, and love. In the end, it reminds us that music like compassion does not need sight to be seen or words to be understood. It simply needs a heart willing to listen.